Hey guys, it's the morning of day 3. Got a big delivery coming later today that I'm excited to show you guys. It's something I think is going to be really useful around here in the future. It's going to sting a little bit to have to pay for it, but I made a deposit on it that is non-refundable. So unless I want to lose a lot of money for no reason, I'm going to go ahead and make it work. So, but before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about the things that I did to be prepared for this scenario where I did lose a job. Um, it started back probably about 5 years ago now, maybe more, maybe 6, with the Survival Podcast by Jack Spirko. Um, he taught me everything I know about preparedness. He introduced me to permaculture. He taught me the debt snowball. I owe a lot to Jack Spirko, and I hope that one day I can tell him how much he did for me and my family. Um, but the first thing I did when I first started listening to Jack was he talked about the idea of copy canning. And what that is when you go to the grocery store and you buy a can of, say, green beans or corn or whatever it is, um, instead of buying one, you buy two. And you get to where eventually your pantry starts to fill up with the food that you eat. And so you have, now you've started to store what you eat. And eventually, when you get enough supplies, you don't have to necessarily buy every time you go to the grocery store. You can wait for sales, and then you can stock up. And stocking up on long-term storable food like cans of beans, they last for years, and you can wait for buying opportunities. So you actually end up saving money in the long run. So you're saving money and you're storing food. And so you do that with your cans. You can do that with anything that lasts for a while. And we're talking like years, 1 or 2 years when I say a while. So we did that. We started filling up our pantry. Started storing water as well. That's more of a, not necessarily an everyday emergency kind of thing, but every once in a while our power goes out and we're on a well. And so obviously when a well doesn't have energy, it's not going to be able to pump for you. So we save up water in 1 gallon jugs or in 2 liter pop bottles. And when I say jugs, it's these really thick plastic jugs that you get from Costco for things like their apple juice or this mango nectar. That's really good but really bad for you. It's just full of sugar. But those solid jugs are what you need. You don't want to use milk jugs for this because they break down and you'll get a big mess everywhere and it'll be horrible. So we're saving food, we're saving water. But the big thing that we did, I mentioned the debt snowball before, and that's a mechanism to get you out of debt. If you have debt, you're paying every month for either interest payments or just to service the loan. You're not putting that money to work for you. You're not saving it. And so what I had when I first started listening to the podcast, I had a house. Actually, I had 2 houses. No, I didn't have 2 houses at that point. Um, we had our house, we had a car payment, and I had a lot of student debt. Um, just like everyone else my age, I got out of high school, I went right into college, paid for everything with loans, thinking it wouldn't be a big deal. I'll make a lot of money when I get out of college anyway. It's not true. So the first thing I had to do is I had to get rid of the student debt. And so I started with the smallest loan that I had. I paid it off as quickly as I could, and then I started applying that monthly payment to the next smallest loan that I had. And then once that was paid off, I took both those payments and applied it to the next one and the next one and so on. That's why it's called the snowball. And so eventually you start working on your biggest loan with the payments from all these previous smaller loans, and you pay it off actually faster than any of the other ones because you're applying way more money to it. And so in right about 2 years from the time I started, I was able to pay off all of my student loans. And if I had just kept on making the minimum payments, it would have taken me almost 15, maybe 20 years. And so I got out from under that, and I had about an extra $1,000 a month that I could apply to other things. And so there's a huge benefit right there, is you're able to put away a lot of money every month that you previously were just wasting, essentially. And to get out of my car payment, I sold my car. We were lucky enough that we found an extra vehicle. Well, I say found, but we have some amazing friends that were gonna get rid of their car, and they basically just gave it to us. So it was an old car, had a lot of miles on it, but it's a car. So we got really lucky in that scenario that we were able to get rid of my car that still had a lot of debt associated with it, sell it, pay off the most of the loan, and get rid of our car payment. And so that's another big thing I've done. It's a lot cheaper in the long run to keep a used car going than it is to buy a car and have a payment. And so that's what I've been doing now, is we have two vehicles that I maintain, but we don't have a payment on them. So after we got out of debt on the car and my student loans, we actually had our first house that we bought right in 2007, right before things got really bad, and we were able to service that loan all through all that whole mess, and it finally sold about a year ago, because I was worried about having a rental property that if things got bad again, we wouldn't be able to find a tenant, and we couldn't service both the mortgage for that house and the mortgage for the house that we're in now, where we have our 17 acres here. And so we sold that house, and we actually made a little bit of money back on it, which we put directly into savings. So here recently, what we actually did is we refinanced the mortgage here for this property, and got a lower interest rate, and cut it down from a 30-year mortgage to a 15-year mortgage. So we actually only increased the mortgage by a tiny bit, and because we dropped the interest rate so low, and we also got rid of the PMI, whereas previously we were paying for that. And if you don't know what that is, it's mortgage insurance, which is basically the bank's way of stealing more money from you because you didn't have enough equity in the house at the time. You have to have, if you owe more than 80% of the house value or the property value, you have to pay that mortgage insurance. And so when we refinanced, we were able to get rid of that, and we got a lower interest rate. And so for only a little bit more extra a month, we cut the life of the loan in half. And so those are the kind of things you need to be thinking about. Is debt is a huge thing. It keeps you kind of trapped in having to have a job. It takes away a lot of your options. And so if you're able to reduce your debt, it's going to free up a lot of options for you and a lot of time, because you're not going to have this panic where if something happens and you do lose your job, you have to find something immediately, or you're going to start losing your house. You're going to start defaulting on your loans, and it's hard to save when you have debt. And if you're not saving, then you're not prepared for the loss of a job. And thankfully, I learned from my parents that you don't charge your credit card unless you can pay it off right away. So we didn't have any credit card debt. My wife and I were good in that regard. So I know that's a big thing that a lot of people have. The debt snowball applies to student loans, it applies to mortgages, it applies to credit card debt. So credit card debt is probably the most heinous debt you can have. So I'd encourage everyone that while you are working, do whatever you can to get out from under the credit card debt, the student loan debt, and just start paying off. A mortgage, it's harder to pay off, but at least there's value behind it. There's always the home's value that you could, worst case scenario, there's at least some meaningful thing behind that debt, because everybody needs a home. whether you're renting or you have a mortgage. You need that to survive, basically. So we got rid of the debt. We were storing food. We were building up our savings. We have enough in savings between my last paycheck, our savings account, the severance package, and my 401k. We have enough to be comfortable for a little while. So this really gives me the time to do what I'm doing, to make these videos, to share my experiences with you. Because if I didn't have that, it would just be this huge panic of finding whatever I could find immediately. Whereas now, I can share my experiences with you. I can take my time to find what I'm actually passionate about. I can build my own business. I'm actually working with a guy named Josiah Wallingford, who you may know, with a company called PermaEthos right now. And we're working to build it into something that is sustainable and that could be a full-time occupation, that could be an income. And if I had to rush out and find another job, I could never do that. And I am absolutely in love with the idea of PermaEthos and Thrive Through, and I am so glad that I'm able to work on something like that I could talk about for days and just be really excited about, and not have this horrible feeling of I'm wasting my time, or I'm gonna lose my house, or my kids are gonna be hungry. I don't have to have that worry, thanks to the steps that I took while I had a job. And so the main takeaway is, don't take your job for granted. Don't think that you can just pay things off later. You need to start paying them off now, because I had absolutely no warning. I found out at 4 and I was gone by 5:10. Like I said, my time was completely covered. I was fully billable every day. I wasn't just charging to overhead. I wasn't dragging the company down. I was pulling my weight. I was doing a good job, and I was let go. So, and that's honest. That's not me making it sound better than it is. That's what my boss told me, and that's the truth. I was doing a good job, and they still let me go after 10 years with no warning. It can happen to me. It can happen to you. You need to start taking steps now so that if you do lose your job, or even if you don't, your life will be better. You pay off those debts, you're going to have a lot more money every month than you had before that you can put into savings, or that you could spend on a family vacation, or maybe you could start your own business. That you open up a lot more doors when you get out from under that debt. So I'd encourage all of you to look up the debt snowball, to find ways to make more than that minimum payment, and start getting out from under your debt. So that's my big message for the day. I'll see you here in a little bit when my big surprise gets here. So I'm excited to share that with you all. I think it's going to make a big difference here on the farm. And thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Hey guys, so it's delivery time. I'm heading down to the barn, going down the driveway a little bit to show you what's arrived. Get a little sneak peek. There's some flashing lights, a little bit of something there. So let's go get a close-up. Here it is, special delivery. It's a John Deere 3032E, and it's something I've been needing for a long time. I've had an old John Deere. It was a 2010 from 1964, and the only problem I had with it, it still ran great, still maintained it and everything, but it didn't have a loader, and I needed a loader. And so here we got the loader, we got the spikes on the front for digging, and I got the forks. So I'm thinking this is going to be a big help, and I've got a lot of uses for it. The payment might be a little tricky for a little while, but we'll make it work. There's Kevin, he's kind enough to bring it out to me today. But that's it. That's the big surprise, big delivery. So I'm excited about it. Hey guys, so day 3's over. Had a great day. Got a lot of work done today. Some job searching, some work for PermaEthos, and really excited about the tractor. Really excited about the tractor. It's something I've needed for about 5 years, basically since I moved here. It's going to help in a lot of things, moving wood chips around, moving compost around, moving hay bales around, you name it. I've got a use for it. So really looking forward to putting that to good use and starting to save a lot more time than I was before. Tomorrow, going to be going to town with my wife and kids. We're going to do a little touristy stuff, do a little bit of sightseeing, and hopefully we'll get home in time for a few things outside. I'd like to do the comfrey tea that I mentioned in my episode yesterday. Going to start that. It's probably going to take a week or two. I'm honestly not sure how long it's going to take, but we'll find out together. It'll be fun. I'm assuming the horrible smell will probably give it away when it's ready. So on top of that, I'd also like to clean up the garden area a little bit more. There's some things that still need to be taken down, and also I'd like to do something with that lemon balm. I've got a little bit of mint in a small herb garden that my wife has, and I don't know. I kind of want to throw some mint and some lemon balm in a jar and pour some hot water on it and see what happens. So maybe I'll do that too. But either way, thanks for sticking around, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.